Well, Brexit Britain continues to surprise us, doesn't it? This time, the Prime Minister's called a snap election, despite promising that she wouldn't. She's looking for a big show of support as she heads into negotiations with her European counterparts. And the poll will be held on June the 8th, so not much time, really. Brexit and now a snap election. It's all making investors rather nervous, as Azhar Sukri reports.
With a change of seasons in the air comes a remarkable shift in Theresa May's political strategy. The British economy is doing well, and her Conservative Party is ahead in the opinion polls. An opportunity, then, to consolidate her leadership ahead of tough negotiations with the EU over Brexit.
I have just chaired a meeting of the Cabinet where we agreed that the government should call a general election to be held on the 8th of June. Despite predictions of immediate financial and economic danger, since the referendum we have seen consumer confidence remain high, record numbers of jobs, and economic growth that has exceeded all expectations.
But 10 months earlier, in the initial shock after the UK voted to leave the EU, and as she made her pitch to become Prime Minister, this was Theresa May's unequivocal position.
There should be no general election until 2020.
Ahead of May's latest announcement, investors sharply sold off the British pound against the US dollar. But sterling rebounded after her speech, climbing to a 4-month high on hopes that an election victory will give May a strong bargaining position during the 2-year Brexit talks that have yet to get underway. UK-listed stocks fell, the stronger pound raising concerns that British exports could become more expensive and less competitive. Some analysts say that a victory for May's party will end some uncertainty, such as opposition from some in the UK who want to retain close ties to the EU at any cost. But others say the election could once again raise a question mark over the whole Brexit process.
Many Brexit voters are now changing their minds. So we could see some sort of break-off party decide to vote purely on Europe. This election will be voted not on the traditional domestic issues. It will be voted on whether or not we're staying in Europe or not.
Many investors are bracing for a period of rising volatility in stock and currency markets in the run-up to the June vote. For ordinary Brits, it's looking like another summer filled with political intrigue and more question marks over the UK's economic future. Azhar Sukri, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined now from London by Chris Roebuck. He's a visiting professor of transformational leadership at the Cass Business School. Chris Roebuck, thank you so much for joining us on Money Talks. You look at transformational leadership. What do you think about Theresa May's leadership? She said she wouldn't call a snap general election, and here she is. Is this political expediency? What exactly is she trying to capitalise on?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's a classic leadership dilemma. You know, you've got a position that's weaker than you would like. You're about to go into negotiations. And the question is, do you take a bit of a risk to strengthen your position? And that's exactly what she's trying to do. She's made the calculation that perhaps her position, both in terms of within the UK and also in negotiations, was maybe weaker when earlier last year, she thought that she had a stronger position. So she's now said, fine, I need to do something to consolidate. So to be blunt, you know, this could be an opportunity. Equally, it could be a big risk.
Now,
the critical factor is, what do the British people want to vote on?
Now we'll come to that in a minute. But Chris, let me first of all ask you, what is it about the current conditions that makes her suddenly think it's to her advantage to call an election?
At its most simple, I think she's had a little bit more resistance in terms of getting Brexit moving in Parliament and in other places than she wanted. In addition, what she's also seen is that the opposition is not doing at all well in the polls. So these two things have come together and have pretty much conjoined into what could be seen as an opportunity.
And then let me ask you about the type of Brexit we're going to get, or Britain is going to get, according to the vote outcome. what is the most dramatic thing we could see whereby, you know, the type of Brexit that's negotiated changes form? Soft Brexit, hard Brexit, access to the single European market, labour movement, so on.
I think the problem is that what people are going to vote on the 5th of June is what they think Brexit might be. So, if we take the vote as it was last year, where the Remainers lost, what's happened since then is as we've approached a more hard Brexit, some people who voted leave have now changed their minds. So if the British people on the 5th of June vote on the basis of giving her a strong hand for negotiation, accepting that Brexit is going to happen, she'll be fine. If, however, they vote on the basis that they've now had second thoughts about Brexit, and they want to weaken her hand in an attempt to perhaps prevent Brexit proceeding, she may have a problem.
Oh dear. Let me ask you about this. The President of the European Council, Mr. Tusk, he says it was Hitchcock who directed Brexit, first an earthquake, and the tension rises. Is he exaggerating things from the European continent that, you know, inside Britain, people are getting used to this eventuality?
I think what's happening is that, to be blunt, when people voted, they voted on their idea of Brexit that happened to be in their head at the time. You could make the argument that some voted on a rational analysis of the position and others voted on an emotional feeling about what they wanted to happen. Since that vote, what's now happened is the reality is sinking in. And some people are beginning to say, well, I didn't quite anticipate it was going to be that hard. And so I think what's happened is people have moved positions, and the polls show that. The question is, when people vote on the 5th of June, do they accept that Brexit is inevitable, or do they think there is some opportunity to slow it down if they're worried about it? Okay. And I think that that's the risk. And it's that critical thing. Are you voting emotionally or are you voting rationally?
Chris Roebuck in London, thank you so much for your analysis.